At least 2 cargo containers loaded with pulses and other goods arrived in Torkham late on Friday night from Russia under the Transport International Route Agreement. Officials said that the consignment, the first of its type, was part of the Transport International Route bilateral trade treaty signed with Russia in March this year during the Moscow visit of Federal Minister for Communication Asad Mahmood. They said that with the signing of the agreement and the arrival of the first consignment, the two countries are now formally linked through bilateral trade. Customs officials said that Pakistan has the potential to export rice, medicine, fresh fruit and vegetables, along with sports gear, while it could import textiles and textile machinery from Russia. The European Commission has proposed extending Pakistan's GSP Plus status for another 4 years as a contingency measure. It is set to expire at the end of this year. The EU has decided to introduce fresh legislation to continue the scheme for another 10 years. But there seems to be a deadlock between the EU Council, which wants to link the GSP Plus scheme with migration, and the EU Parliament, which is not ready to do so. As a temporary measure, it has been proposed that the current scheme should be extended for 4 years. The proposal will now be put to the vote in the EU Parliament. In a statement, EU Ambassador to Pakistan Dr. Reena Kionka said they were keeping a close eye on Pakistan. A European official also commented that upcoming conditions may prove challenging for Pakistan.
The proposed extension of the current regulation for GSP Plus in effect means no change for Pakistan at the moment. It means actually that Pakistan enjoys the same preferences, trade preferences, access to the European market. It also has the same obligations as before in terms of implementing effectively the 27 international human rights, labor rights, environment, and governance conventions. It also means that the EU will continue to monitor progress and backsliding, and we will continue to report to the European Parliament and the Member State. The proposed continuation of the extension of the current regulation doesn't apply only to Pakistan, it applies to all 8 beneficiary countries of GSP+. The main issue here is to avoid a kind of cliff at the end of the year. Nobody wants that to happen, certainly not the European Union, because it would mean a sudden stop to the trade preferences, which would affect Pakistani exporters. It would affect certainly the factory workers and their families. It would affect European businesses who rely on Pakistani suppliers, and in effect also would affect European consumers. The latest report on the GSP Plus monitoring mission that came last summer is going to come out soon, so I don't want to prejudice any thoughts on what it might exactly say. But from earlier missions and earlier monitoring, I can tell you that there are certain areas where the EU would like to see more improvement, for instance, on freedom of expression, on freedom of the media, certainly on freedom of religion and belief, the situation of minorities, rights of women and gender equality, and also labor rights.
There's growing uneasiness among big industrial groups about the zeal shown by the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly in finding out the names of businesses that received subsidized loans of $3 billion under the COVID-era Temporary Economic Refinance Facility. While spokespeople for large conglomerates have been sending out cryptic tweets that question the rationale of the move, the representative chamber of big capital has called Temporary Economic Refinance Facility the single most effective initiative by the State Bank of Pakistan. The SBP-backed facility allowed industrialists to borrow long-term loans from commercial banks for the import of machinery between April 2020 and March 2021 at a concessional interest rate. The temporary economic refinance facility structure allowed the same commercial banks to recover the rest of the cost of funds from the SPP from the State Bank of Pakistan. Members of the Public Accounts Committee have been demanding that the names of the 628 beneficiaries of approved financing worth 435.7 billion rupees be disclosed, given that they receive public funds. After resisting the move for some time, the State Bank of Pakistan has reportedly agreed to submit the names to the Public Accounts Committee in an in-camera session. US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen called on Friday for market reforms in China and criticized its recent tough actions against US companies and mineral export controls, while China's premier called on her to meet China halfway and put bilateral relations back on track. Yellen met with Premier Li Qiang on Friday during a visit to Beijing aimed at repairing fractious US-China economic relations, but made clear in her public remarks that Washington and its Western allies will continue to hit back at what she called China's unfair economic practices. Despite talk of US-China economic decoupling, recent data showed that the world's two largest economies remain deeply linked, with two-way trade hitting a record $690 billion last year.